I'm John Dass, the Director of Dedicated Accident Solicitors. I am recognised by the Association of Personal Injury Lawyers as a National Asbestos Disease Specialist, and I am also a mesothelioma patron to the British Lung Foundation. Mr. Robertson was exposed to asbestos in the mid-60s whilst he worked for Brock Shop Fitters. Then in the early 70s he worked for the London Borough of Bexley, where he was undertaking general maintenance to old buildings. He was required to strip asbestos from old buildings with his bare hands, without any personal protective equipment such as a mask, and neither was he given any verbal or written warnings as to the dangerous nature of being exposed to asbestos. The fact that Mr. Robertson was diagnosed with mesothelioma after his death meant that we were unable to obtain a lifetime witness statement from him, giving his account as to where he'd been exposed to asbestos during the course of his working life. It was Mr. Robertson's dying wish that his family approach a solicitor who was able to take the case on their behalf and hopefully win it. We have been successful in enabling that wish to come to fruition, and it gives us a great sense of professional pride to know that we've been able to take that step.
My dad actually was working when I was obviously a very young child. He was working for a company that was ripping out the old wimpy bars, and there was a lot of asbestos there. Previous to that, he worked for another company when he was an apprentice, and he was sweeping up and he was cutting asbestos boards. And obviously at that stage he didn't know that there was any danger with working with the stuff, but he wasn't aware that there was any dangers at all. Dad would always work long hours and just done his day's work. But I do remember him saying that when he used to come home he was covered in dust, and Mum used to have to wash his overalls and such like. Dad never got given any protective equipment to wear, and he spoke about that in later years once it came to public's notice that there was such a thing. My father was diagnosed after he passed away. My father suffered from mesothelioma. We had an idea that's what he had, and Dad was sure that that was what he was suffering from. I got a phone call to ask me to go over on holiday, and it came out of the blue. I'd spoken to Dad on I think the Sunday, and then all of a sudden on the Monday he wanted to lend me the money for me to go over on a holiday. So in my head I knew there was something not quite right. When I got there he was on oxygen. He'd lost an awful amount of weight. He could hardly walk. He was totally housebound. And then we had the funeral just before I came back home. He kept writing notes because he could hardly speak, and he kept writing notes of his previous employers, and he kept saying, "You've got to do this for me, Elaine. I need you to vindicate me." My dad wanted me to contact an asbestosis solicitor. It was basically his dying wish, and I did try a company that was in London, but because of the South Africa connotation and because we didn't actually have a proper diagnosis at that stage, they just didn't take it on. And I looked at John Dass's website for Dedicated Accident Solicitors, and I thought, I like this guy, this sounds good. And I contacted John. I couldn't believe that he would fly from Derby up to Scotland just for an initial meeting without really knowing if my story was enough to be able to put a claim through. Him and the whole team, Alison, they've been absolutely fantastic right the way through. They've phoned South Africa, they've emailed, they've kept us all in the loop. No, I couldn't ask for a better service. They've been excellent.